Janet raised her glass and said it like a joke. "This is Jimmy, my oldest friend. He's been by my side forever." The room chuckled. My name wasn't even on the seating chart. I wasn't listed as her fiance, wasn't introduced as her partner, just friend. After 3 years of planning our future, after buying her ring with 2 months' salary and booking the wedding venue myself, I stood next to her like some leftover from her past. Clara's eyes met mine from across the ballroom. Her smile was soft, unreadable. She didn't clap with the others, didn't laugh either. She just tilted her head slightly as if to say, "So this is how she plays you in public?" I forced a grin and swallowed the burn building in my throat. Then I clapped, louder than anyone in the room. "To Janet," I said, "the bravest woman I know. Brave enough to erase me in front of her entire world. Brave enough to wear my ring and pretend she wasn't engaged." Someone asked, "Weren't you the one planning her wedding?" "She's got help from many friends," I replied. Another guest raised a brow. "But aren't you?" I interrupted with a calm nod. "Apparently, I'm just history now." That's when I turned to Clara. "Come with me." She blinked once. "Now?" "Now." We left through the back exit, passing glittering chandeliers and gossiping tongues. I pulled my phone out and dialed. The city clerk owed me a favor. "You serious?" Clara asked, watching me text. I didn't look up. "You told me last year if I ever wanted to make Janet regret something, you'd help." Clara folded her arms. "And if I said I was just joking?" I finally looked at her. "Then I'll go alone, but you'll miss the best scene of the night." She stared at me for 2 seconds too long, then smirked. "Fine, but I want diamonds." An hour later, in a silent office lit by a desk lamp, Clara signed the marriage certificate with the same fingers that had once fixed my tie before Janet's graduation ceremony. The same fingers Janet once mocked for having chipped polish. "You know," Clara said as she wrote her name, "I always liked being second choice, leaves me room to be the smarter option." I signed beside her. "Tonight, you became the only option." She didn't blush, just said, "She's going to scream." "She can try," I replied, "but now it'll be Mrs. Jimmy's cousin doing the screaming." When we walked back into the ballroom, the music paused. Janet stood mid-toast, eyes wide, hand frozen mid-air. Clara held my arm with the elegance of a trained actress. I leaned close to Janet and whispered, "Forgot to mention, you just introduced your husband as a friend." Clara raised her glass next. "To bold decisions and forgotten fiancés." Janet didn't drop her glass, but she dropped her smile. Janet and I met on the second to last Friday of September, 3 years ago, when I accidentally spilled black coffee on her cream-colored blazer. She'd stared at the stain like it had personally insulted her, then looked up at me like I had. "You owe me dry cleaning," she'd said flatly. "And maybe therapy." I offered both. We laughed. The coffee dried. But that moment marked the beginning of a relationship built on accidental collisions, shared deadlines, and the kind of chemistry you don't plan for. Janet wasn't warm, but she was magnetic. She didn't chase love, she curated it, like the rest of her life. I was the opposite, quiet, methodical, soft-spoken where she was sharp-edged. I didn't mind her ambition, I admired it. Janet was always moving, always polishing her edges, always 3 steps ahead, and I was always behind her, by choice. We dated quietly, no flashy social media posts, no soft launches or hard launches. She said public relationships were for people with something to prove. "Why do we need to shout about what's ours?" she'd ask, resting her head on my shoulder. "Let's just be it." Back then, I thought that was romantic. I proposed on a rainy Tuesday in May, nothing extravagant, just a small rooftop dinner I cooked myself, candles soaked by the drizzle, her favorite wine chilled to the exact degree. She didn't cry. Janet never cried. She looked at the ring, looked at me, and said, "You always did know how to time things." Not a yes, not a no, just a nod of agreement, followed by her fingers sliding into mine as she slipped on the ring. We didn't rush to announce it. She said it would distract from her brand, whatever that meant. At first, I was fine with that. Janet's world moved fast: campaigns, press conferences, award shows, business trips that started without warning and ended without notice. I was just happy to be in her orbit, to have my name whispered into her pillow when the lights were off and the world was gone. But slowly, I noticed the pattern. She introduced me to friends as Jimmy. Just Jimmy. Never my boyfriend, never my fiance. I was the background detail, the man who fetched her bag when she forgot it in the lobby, the one who remembered her allergies when her assistant didn't. I was her cushion, her calm, her silence. To the public, I was nothing. I never asked for attention, but I noticed the cracks. She'd laugh too quickly when people asked if she was single. She'd pause too long before introducing me at events. Once, at her office's year-end party, one of her colleagues asked if we'd just met that night. She laughed. "He's just an old friend," she said. Just an old friend. That was the first time I didn't sleep at her place. Still, I made excuses for her. She was under pressure. She had her image to maintain. She was waiting for the right moment to go public. And more than anything, I didn't want to be the insecure man who demanded a label. I wanted to be better than that. And maybe I was afraid of the answer. The ring stayed on her finger, at least. That tiny circle of metal became the only proof that we were more than just friends. I caught her looking at it sometimes, quietly, absently, like it reminded her of something inconvenient, but she never took it off. Even when Michael came back into her life. Michael was her ex, tall, polished, smug in that effortless way only men who've never been rejected can be. He slid into her world again, like he'd never left. A casual coffee one day, a missed you text the next. I trusted Janet, I had no reason not to. Until I did. One night, after a long day at work, I came to her apartment unannounced. She always left the key under the flower pot. When I stepped in, she was in the living room, laughing at something on her phone. She didn't notice me at first. On the table were 2 wine glasses, one was still warm. She froze when she saw me. "You should have called," she said, too quickly. "I used to live here," I replied. There was lipstick on the rim of her glass, it wasn't hers. "I had friends over," she said. "Clara came by, and Michael." Clara, her cousin, the only person in her life who treated me like I existed. "You didn't invite me," I said. "It was last minute." She stood and started clearing the glasses. "You don't have to lie." "I'm not." But she was. I didn't push, I never pushed, that was my role, the man who accepts, the man who understands. I took the silence as my cue to leave. Clara texted me later that night. I didn't come over, she was alone with him. I didn't reply, but something in me broke. After that, I started to notice everything, the way she avoided saying fiancé in public, the way her hand twitched when people asked about her ring, the way she kept me behind glass, visible, but unreachable. I wasn't her partner, I was her safety net. And then came the promotion gala. She had spent a week preparing for it, choosing the right dress, the right venue, the right lighting for photographs. I stood beside her, helping her rehearse her speech, timing her pauses, adjusting her earrings because she couldn't see herself from the right angle. That night, she shimmered. All eyes were on her, and when she got on stage, she smiled like a queen accepting her crown. "And this," she said, gesturing to me, "is Jimmy, my oldest friend, my rock." The room clapped. I died. My name faded into the applause. The ring on her finger meant nothing. The years, the memories, the sacrifices, I had no role in her story. I wasn't even listed in the program. That's when I looked across the room and saw Clara. She didn't smile, she didn't clap, she just looked at me like she'd been waiting for this moment, like she'd known it would come, like I had no one else to blame but myself for staying too long in a place where I wasn't wanted. And maybe she was right. Because it wasn't Janet who finally left, it was me. I walked off the ballroom floor, took out my phone, dialed Clara. "Are you busy?" I asked. "Not if you're calling." "I need a witness," I said. "To what?" "A marriage." She was quiet for 2 seconds, then, "Where do I meet you?" "The rest, you know." The ring meant nothing to Janet, but it meant everything to me. And when Clara slipped it on, when she signed the papers with a sharp, calm smile, I felt something new. Not revenge. Relief. Because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't begging to be seen. I had become undeniable. The first person to knock on Clara's apartment door the next morning wasn't a reporter, it was Janet. She wasn't screaming, she wasn't crying, she wasn't even angry, she was calm, too calm. That eerie kind of quiet that comes when the explosion's already happened and there's only dust in the air. Clara opened the door while I stood in the hallway behind her, a mug of coffee in my hand. Janet's eyes flicked to it. She didn't react. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone flat. Clara glanced at me. "You want me to leave?" I shook my head and stepped forward. "She can stay." Janet stepped inside, her heels clicked softly against Clara's wooden floor. She stopped in the middle of the room and turned to face us, arms folded. "So that's it?" she asked. "You actually married her?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because of what I said last night?" she scoffed. "Jimmy, I was nervous. It was a big night. There were clients there, investors." "You introduced me as a friend," I said, setting the coffee mug down. "You didn't even glance at my hand. You didn't acknowledge our engagement." She frowned. "You think I don't care? You think I just forgot?" "I think," I said, carefully, "you made a choice, a public one." Janet took a slow breath. "So you made one too? With Clara?" Clara didn't say a word. She just stood beside me, hands calmly folded in front of her, like this was just another Tuesday morning. "She's your cousin," Janet said, eyes narrowing at Clara. "And you, what? You thought this was your moment to step in?" Clara blinked slowly. "I didn't step in. You stepped out." Janet turned to me. "You think this marriage is real? You think she actually wants you?" "I don't think I need to explain anything to you," I said. "You were mine, Jimmy," she said, voice suddenly cracking. "We were building something." "No," I said. "I was building. You were decorating." The silence that followed was D-ness. Janet looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Like the quiet, dependable Jimmy who used to iron her speeches and adjust her lighting had been replaced by a stranger in his skin. She turned and left without another word. After the door closed, Clara exhaled. "That went better than I expected." "She'll be back," I said. "But it won't matter." Janet did come back. Not to the apartment, but to the media. 2 days later, a gossip site posted a blurry photo of Clara and me at the courthouse, accompanied by the headline, "Billionaire's ex-fiancé marries her cousin in shocking twist." Janet gave a vague interview later that day, pretending not to be involved, claiming she wished them well. But her eyes told a different story. Michael called me that night. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, voice irritated. "I don't owe you clarity," I said. "She's spiraling, man," he said. "You humiliated her." "She introduced me as a friend, Mike." Michael was quiet for a moment, then he sighed. "She's not built like us." "No," I agreed. "She's built for herself." "Don't say I didn't warn you," he muttered. 3 days passed, then came the text, "Janet, I want to talk, just us, no Clara, no accusations." I didn't reply. Clara saw the message when my phone lit up. She didn't flinch. "You're going to meet her," she said, not a question. "I don't owe her anything." "No," she said, turning the page of her book. "But maybe you owe yourself a clean ending." We met in the garden behind the hotel where she used to hold her press events. She was already sitting on the bench when I arrived, legs crossed, hands clenched in her lap. She looked up when I approached. "Thanks for coming." "I didn't come for you," I said. "I came for closure." She nodded slowly. "Fair." She didn't speak again for a long time, then, finally, "Did you ever actually love me?" I didn't answer right away. Then, "I thought I did." She nodded, like she'd expected that. "I don't know when it shifted," I continued, "but somewhere along the way, I became background noise. I never meant to make you feel that way." "You didn't have to mean it," I said. "You just did." She looked down. "Clara's not like me." "No," I said. "She sees me." "And what happens when she stops?" I smiled sadly. "Then I'll leave too." Janet blinked fast. "You used to be the safest thing in my life." "That was your mistake," I said. "You thought I'd stay even when you stopped choosing me." The tabloids exploded after that, Photos of Clara and me walking out of an art gallery, a leaked email from Janet's publicist trying to spin the narrative, a podcast episode where Michael all but admitted to flirting with Janet while we were engaged. Janet didn't deny it. She just stopped responding. One evening, while Clara and I were eating dinner, she put her fork down mid-bite. She's not done. Who? Janet. I sighed. She's had her say. Clara shook her head. You don't know her like I do. She's your cousin. She's my warning. The next dias, my office receptionist told me Janet had come in asking for a meeting. She wasn't on the list. I told security not to let her up. Clara called me around noon. She's at my apartment. What? She just walked in. She said she still had a key. I didn't even know she had a key. Is everything okay? Clara's voice was flat. She's in your old shirt, the one she used to steal. I closed my eyes. Tell her to leave. I already did. And? She asked me a question. What? She asked if I'm in love with you. My throat tightened. And what did you say? I told her, Clara said softly, that I don't know yet. But I'm not pretending. Janet's public meltdown came 2 days later. A live stream, shaky and incoherent, ranting about betrayal and being used. She deleted it within 10 minutes, but not before it had been screen recorded and shared across every platform. I didn't respond. Clara didn't blink. Michael, surprisingly, texted me. She's unraveling. You did this. I replied. She did this to herself. That night, Clara found me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. You okay? She asked. She wasn't always like this, I said. She was, Clara replied. You just hoped she'd change. And maybe that was the truth. Maybe I'd stayed in love with a version of Janet that only existed in my memory, a version that had long since vanished. Clara sat beside me and rested her head on my shoulder. She's not your responsibility, she said. I know. Say it. She's not my responsibility. And I'm not your revenge. I turned to look at her. You're my choice. But still, part of me felt hollow, like a bridge had burned with no one on the other side, no one to wave goodbye, no ashes to bury, just smoke. And silence. And a marriage that had started as a statement, but might be becoming something more. Some nights, when the city outside quieted and Clara had already gone to bed, I'd lie awake and stare at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choice, or if I had just made the louder one. It's easy to call something closure when you slam the door hard enough. It's harder when that door echoes long after the house falls silent. Clara never asked how I felt about Janet, not directly. She wasn't the type to fish for emotions I wasn't ready to explain, but she could read silence like a second language, and she always knew when something wasn't sitting right. The truth is, it wasn't regret, it was residue. Janet had been in my life for 3 years, but she'd occupied a space bigger than that. When I was with her, I had reshaped myself without realizing it, bent in ways I never thought I would. And I didn't hate her for that. I hated myself for letting her do it quietly. I missed the idea of her more than her presence, the conversations we never had, the things I never confronted, the love I never received but convinced myself I didn't need. I missed a fantasy, a version of her that had only ever existed in my hope. Clara saw through that, and she let me sit in it. One evening, as we stood brushing our teeth in front of the bathroom mirror, she caught my eyes in the reflection. You look like you're living with a ghost, she said. I paused mid-brush. What do you mean? You wake up tired, you talk less, you listen too hard when people mention her name. That's not nothing. I rinsed and spit. It's not love. I didn't say it was, she replied. But it's something. And I don't need to compete with something nameless. Her honesty cut through the fog. I didn't respond that night, but later, when she fell asleep, curled up in the soft gray blanket she always claimed first, I reached out and pulled her closer. Not because I felt guilty, but because for the first time, in weeks, I realized she'd chosen to stay with a man still haunted by someone else's echo. And that wasn't nothing either. The media began to shift focus. Janet's public spiral made her less interesting as the weeks passed. People love watching a rise, they obsess over a fall, but they're bored by someone who refuses to get up. I hadn't heard from her in almost a month when I got a package, no note, no return address. Inside was a small glass snow globe, the kind she used to collect during our vacations. It was from Prague. We'd never gone to Prague, but she'd always said she wanted to. There was a tiny bridge inside, dusted with fake snow. Underneath the base was a sticky note in small, careful handwriting. Not everything we planned has to vanish. I held the globe for a long time, unsure whether to smash it or return it. In the end, I locked it in the top drawer of my desk and said nothing to Clara. Michael reached out again. Not by text this time, but in person. He showed up outside my office, leaning casually against a pillar, sunglasses tucked into the neckline of his sweater. "I'm not here to fight," he said, hands up. "Then you're wasting your time. I just came to tell you, Janet's leaving the city." I didn't flinch. "Why are you telling me?" "Because I think she's waiting for you to stop her. She's going to be disappointed." Michael shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe she's finally doing what you were too scared to do, walk away properly." I almost laughed. "You're defending her now?" "I'm not defending her, I'm just the only one who still talks to her." "Then tell her goodbye for me." He didn't say anything for a while, then he gave a slow, resigned nod. "She's not the same. You broke something in her." I looked him in the eye. "No, I revealed it." That night, I sat beside Clara on the couch, both of us watching a documentary neither of us cared about. I couldn't stop thinking about the globe in my drawer, the way Michael had said you broke something in her, and whether that meant I was finally allowed to move on, or if I never had. Clara reached out suddenly and grabbed my hand. "If you're still choosing her in your head, just go." My chest tightened. "I'm not." "You're not here either." "I'm trying." She nodded, but her hand let go. "Try louder." A week passed, then another. The snow globe sat untouched. My phone stayed silent. Janet didn't leave the city, not yet, but she vanished from the headlines. She became a ghost with nowhere to haunt. Then Clara's mother got sick. It started small, missed appointments, a fainting spell. Then a diagnosis, early-stage cancer, treatable, but terrifying. Clara didn't cry when she told me. She sat across from me, chewing the inside of her cheek, speaking in perfect order. "I'll move in with her temporarily," she said, "just until the chemo's done. I'll go with you." She shook her head. "You're not obligated." "Neither are you," I replied. "But you're doing it anyway." She smiled for the first time in so days. "You really want to live in a lavender house that smells like eucalyptus and regret?" "If you're there, yeah." In the weeks that followed, I saw a new side of Clara. Patient, exhausted, fierce. She made tea at 2 a.m., learned to tie headscarves, fought doctors who missed details. She never once asked me to step up, but I did. Not because I had something to prove, but because I finally understood what choosing someone looked like. You show up. Even when you're tired. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. One night, Clara found me outside, sitting on her mother's porch steps, holding the snow globe in my hand. I hadn't meant to bring it. I didn't even remember packing it. But there it was. She didn't say anything. I held it up. "This isn't about her." She raised an eyebrow. "It's about me. About how long I spent loving someone who didn't know how to love back. And now that it's gone, I don't know what to do with the habit of remembering." Clara sat beside me. "Then break it." I looked at her. "You want me to smash it?" "No," she said softly. "Just stop shaking it." I laughed under my breath. "You're smarter than me." "No," she said. "I'm just not afraid to look pain in the face." And that was it. The moment it shifted. Janet had been a chapter I never finished reading. Clara was the next page, one I didn't want to dog-ear. But I needed to let the story change. And I did. I stopped checking my phone at night, stopped glancing at headlines, stopped thinking about what could have been, and started focusing on what was already here. Not perfect, not planned, but real. And for the first time in years, I finally slept without ghosts. It was supposed to be a routine meeting, a quarterly strategy session with investors, tucked into a nondescript conference room downtown. Clara had returned home the night before after spending weeks with her mother during the worst of the chemo, and I was still adjusting to the shift of having her beside me again, present, real and grounding. I didn't expect Janet to walk into that room. Not as a guest, not as a spectator, as the newly appointed CEO of Hartman Dale, our firm's newest investor. She walked in wearing a fitted navy suit and red lipstick like armor. Her hair was clipped back with cold precision, and the moment our eyes met, I knew this wasn't coincidence. This was calculated. Clara's hand, which had been resting gently on my knee under the table, went still. Janet smiled politely at the board. "Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to a fruitful partnership." Her gaze slid past Clara, then landed on me like a silent challenge. I didn't blink, I didn't flinch. But inside, something coiled. After the meeting, Clara didn't say much, not on the elevator ride down, not in the car, not even when we got home. She went straight to the bedroom and closed the door without slamming it. That somehow felt worse. I followed a few minutes later, loosening my tie as I leaned against the doorway. "Say something." Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her back to me. "Was this planned?" "No. She bought controlling shares, Jimmy. That doesn't happen overnight." "I didn't know," I said. "I wouldn't keep something like this from you." "She didn't do it for business," Clara said. "She did it for you." She wasn't wrong. Janet didn't show up the next day, or the day after. She waited until the firm was preparing for its largest pitch of the year, the presentation that would determine whether we landed the contract that could double our valuation. And then, she requested it to be part of the team. The board agreed. "We need her political weight," one of the partners told me behind closed doors, "and she knows this client." "She's a conflict of interest," I argued. "She's my ex." "She's an asset," he replied. "Don't let personal matters cost us the deal." I tried to warn Clara. I told her we'd keep it professional, that it would only be for a few weeks. She nodded. "Okay." But I saw the shift in her eyes. It wasn't jealousy. It was betrayal she hadn't earned, and patience I didn't deserve. Working with Janet again felt like walking across thin ice. Every conversation was polite, clipped and surgical, but under the surface, there was heat, subtext, memory, guilt. She didn't say anything suggestive. She didn't break protocol. But she wore the perfume I'd once bought her on our first anniversary. She brought the same blend of tea I used to stock in my kitchen. She laughed at all the right moments during meetings, just long enough for others to remember we had once shared something deeper than deadlines. I didn't engage, but I didn't push her away either. Clara came to the pitch rehearsal the night before the big day. She brought coffee for the team, smiled at the assistants, kissed me on the cheek like she always did. And then she caught Janet's eyes across the room. Janet smiled, subtle, mocking. Clara turned and left without a word. That night, I found her packing. "Don't," I said. "I'm not leaving permanently," she replied. "I just need air." "Clara, you're not doing anything wrong," she said. "And that's the part that scares me the most." "What do you mean?" She zipped the bag. "She's setting fire to the room. And you're still sitting inside like it's warm." I stayed up most of the night after she left. My phone buzzed once at 2:43 a.m. "Janet, congratulations in advance, tomorrow will go perfectly, just like old times." I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. The pitch went better than expected. Our client signed on the spot. The room erupted in handshakes, laughter, champagne. Janet approached me when the others had thinned out. "You should be proud." "I am." "I missed this," she said. "The clarity, the rhythm." I looked at her. "What are you doing, Janet?" "Winning," she said softly. "With or without you." Clara didn't come home that night, or the next. On the third day, I drove to her mother's. She opened the door herself. "Hey," I said. She stepped aside to let me in, then led me to the living room where her mother sat dozing under a knit blanket. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing her temples. She looked tired. Too tired for someone my silence was exhausting. "I didn't cheat," I said. "I know." "I didn't entertain her." "I know." But something still shifted, didn't it? She nodded. "I don't know how to fight a ghost," I whispered. She looked up at me with soft, tired eyes. "I don't need you to fight it. I need you to stop opening the door when it knocks." I stayed that night. Slept on the couch. held her hand in the morning like it was a rope I'd forgotten I was still holding. 3 days later, Janet submitted her resignation. No warning, no meeting, just an email to the board. I came to prove a point. I've made it. I'm D. Sir. 1. Attached was a photo of our signed pitch contract, her initials still crisp on the final page. She didn't say goodbye, not to anyone, not even to me. Weeks passed. Clara and I didn't talk about Janet again. We didn't need to. The silence between us was no longer filled with what-ifs. It was just quiet. And sometimes, quiet is all the victory you need. 2 months passed before I saw Janet again. Not in the office, not at a conference, not on a screen, in person. She showed up at my company's fall fundraiser, alone, uninvited, and dressed in a red gown that almost dared the world to question her presence. The moment she walked in, conversation dipped, eyes shifted. Some people smiled at her, others watched like they were waiting for a performance. She walked slowly, deliberately, the sound of her heels tapping against marble, like a clock counting down. Clara was standing beside me, holding a glass of champagne. Her expression didn't change when she saw Janet. She didn't gasp, didn't freeze, she just straightened her back like a woman prepared for war but unwilling to fire the first shot. Janet approached with practiced grace. "Jimmy," she said simply. "Clara." "Janet," Clara returned, her tone clipped but neutral. "I came to say congratulations," Janet said. "You've managed what no one thought possible, stability." "Thank you," I replied. "We've worked for it." Janet tilted her head. "You look peaceful." "I am." "That must be new." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Not really. You just never noticed." Janet smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't want to stay long, just wanted to deliver something in person." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a white envelope. She held it toward me. "A letter, one I wrote the day you got married. I've rewritten it 5 times, never knew if I wanted you to read it, now I don't care." I didn't move to take it. Clara did. She slid the envelope into her bag without a word. Janet's gaze lingered on me a second longer before she stepped back. "Well," she said, "I suppose this is goodbye, again." Then she turned and walked out, red dress flowing like a curtain closing on the final act. We didn't read the letter that night. We didn't mention it at all. Clara placed her bag in the hallway closet like it didn't contain the final words of a former life. We brushed our teeth side by side. She rested her head on my chest as we lay in bed. And we fell asleep without ghosts. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. At 3:14 a.m., I got up and quietly opened the closet. The envelope was still there, sealed. I didn't open it. I just held it in my hands and realized I didn't need to. Everything I had wanted to hear from Janet, I had already heard, in her silence, in her resignation, in her appearance at the fundraiser where she had nothing left to prove but still came anyway, wearing war paint and heartbreak. She had finally seen the thing I had begged her for all those years, me, but I no longer needed to be seen by her. I put the letter back and went to sleep. 3 days later, the envelope disappeared. Clara hadn't thrown it away, she hadn't burned it, she'd simply removed it. I didn't ask, she didn't explain. It didn't matter. A week later, Clara and I had our first real fight. Not about Janet. Not about the past. About us. It started with something small, a scheduling miscommunication for a client event. Clara had assumed I'd attend. I assumed she'd told me. We both got caught in traffic separately and arrived late. It wasn't a disaster. But it was a crack. At home, we argued. Voices rose, doors closed louder than usual. At one point, she said, "You're slipping back into him." I froze. "What does that mean?" "That man you used to be," she said. "Passive, over-accommodating, afraid to challenge anything because you think love means surviving. That's not fair." "No," she said. "It's honest." I stared at her, breath stuck in my throat. "You think I'm still him?" "I think you're afraid to not be." Silence bloomed between us, thick and ugly. Then I said it, the thing I didn't know I was holding in. I'm scared that if I stop proving I've changed, you'll realize you don't need me. Her shoulders dropped. Jimmy, I married you because you made me feel like I had worth outside of someone else's approval. But sometimes, I feel like I'm still chasing your validation, like I've traded one kind of erasure for another. She didn't defend herself, didn't argue. She walked to me, held my face in both hands. Then let's stop trying to outrun who we used to be and start choosing who we are now. That night, we sat on the floor in the living room with takeout between us and no phones in sight. We listed everything we feared. I feared being invisible again. She feared being loved only for her strength. I feared disappointing her. She feared needing me more than I needed her. We laid our fears out like playing cards, and we didn't try to beat them, we just saw them, and we kept playing anyway. The next morning, Clara handed me something folded and small, a note. It wasn't from Janet, it was from her, just 4 lines. You don't have to prove you're not who you were, you already show me every day who you are, you don't need to fear my silence, I don't weaponize it, I use it to listen. I kept that note. Still do. 2 months later, we held a small ceremony, just family, a few close friends, no cameras, no headlines, not a renewal, a beginning. We stood under an arch. Clara built herself with flowers her mother picked from the garden. I wore a suit that didn't feel like armor. Clara wore a dress that wasn't meant to impress, just to exist beside me in honesty. When we exchanged vows, we didn't recite poetry. We made promises. I promise to tell you when I'm afraid, I said. I promise not to disappear into my independence, she replied. I promise not to shut down when I feel unworthy. I promise to remind you you're not. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. And for the first time in my life, I realized love wasn't a thunderclap. It was steady rain. Janet didn't attend. She sent no letter, no gift, no apology. And that felt right. She had been the storm. But Clara was the sky that stayed. Later that evening, after the last guests had left and Clara's mother had gone to sleep on the couch with a wine glass in her hand, I walked outside to catch some air. And there, sitting on the porch swing, was Clara. Barefoot, hair down, quiet. She patted the space beside her. I sat down. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I said, "Thank you." For what? For waiting for me to arrive. She smiled into my shirt. You were never lost, just busy dropping baggage. I looked up at the stars. Do you think we'll change again? Yes, she said. But this time, we'll do it together. That was the moment. The real climax. Not the confrontation with Janet. Not the public fallout. Not the resignation, or the fundraiser. This. Choosing to love each other after the drama had ended. After the adrenaline was gone. When nothing was burning and no one was watching. When it was just us, sitting in the aftermath of storms, building a life brick by quiet brick. That was the loudest love I'd ever known. 6 months after our wedding, Clara and I launched our own firm. Not a branch, not a side hustle. A direct competitor to the one I used to build for Janet's investors, the one that once allowed her to parade me in front of boardrooms while quietly erasing my name from every headline. We called it Northlight Strategies, not flashy, not loud, but precise. Clara handled public relations, I took operations. Together, we built a reputation on 3 things: quiet power, clean delivery, and unshakable boundaries. It didn't take long for word to spread, and it didn't take long for Hartman Dale to feel it. 3 clients moved over within the first quarter, quietly, respectfully. Then a 4th, much bigger one, left with a public press release that mentioned transparent leadership and visionary execution. The kind of language no PR firm throws around lightly. Janet didn't respond. Not until the 5th client defected. And it wasn't just any client. It was Raylin Group, the account we had once pitched together, the deal she had celebrated with champagne and a photo op. The very account that once gave her legitimacy in the eyes of upper management. Gone. To us. And that's when she called. She didn't use pleasantries, didn't pretend to be civil. You're trying to destroy me. No, I said. I'm building something. You're just standing too close to the wreckage you left behind. You're doing this to get even. I already did that, I said. The day I married your cousin. She exhaled hard. You think you've won? I'm not playing your game anymore, Janet. I have nothing to prove. You're so smug, she spat. No, I replied. I'm just free. Then I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. But life isn't always clean chapters and neat exits. Sometimes ghosts return, not through confrontation, but through consequence. A month later, news broke that Janet had been forced to step down. Not because of our firm, because of her own carelessness. Emails leaked, expense reports exposed, a pattern of manipulating intern credit surfaced. The same tactics she once used to keep me invisible had been used on others, and this time, the world noticed. Clara was the first to show me the headline. Hartman-Dale CEO steps down amid internal ethics probe. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me the article and raised an eyebrow. I read it twice, and all I felt was peace. No gloating, no vindication, no joy, just confirmation. What I couldn't do to her with 1,000 arguments, the truth did for me. She had always built her empire on polish and control. Eventually, cracks show. Clara leaned against the counter, sipping her tea. You okay? She asked. Better than okay. She nodded. Closure? No, I said. Completion. She smiled. There's a difference. I nodded. Closure is hoping the past explains itself. Completion is realizing it never will and not needing it to anymore. She walked to me, placed her tea down, and looped her arms around my waist. So what now? Now, I said, we build. Northlight continued to grow. Our team expanded. We moved into a larger office. We hired people Janet would have dismissed as unpolished and turned them into stars. But it wasn't about beating anyone anymore. It was about doing the work in a way that no longer required sacrifice of identity. I stopped performing. Clara stopped carrying the weight alone. And together, we didn't just function, we flourished. We went home early, we turned off our phones, we prioritized silence as much as strategy. And we learned that peace was something you didn't earn through revenge, but through release. A year passed. Then two. We were named in Forbes's top 10 emerging leadership firms. A journalist requested an interview, asking about my past engagement and its infamous fallout. I declined. Clara asked me why. I said, because that part of my story doesn't define the man I became. She smiled. That's the real revenge, isn't it? I thought for a second, then said, no, that's the recovery. One rainy evening, I walked past a bookstore on 8th Street and saw something in the window that made me stop cold. A small hardcover memoir, tucked among the non-fiction new releases. The title, Edited Out, What I Lost Trying to Be Perfect. Author, Janet Ellison. I stared at the cover for a long moment. It wasn't flashy, just her name, her face, and a simple line in small type. Some love stories never begin because the main character doesn't see himself. I didn't buy it. But I stood there for a few more seconds, letting the rain fall as I stared at the name of a woman who had once rewritten my entire identity and who had finally written her own story, not mine. I walked away dry. That night, Clara and I watched a documentary on urban architecture. She rested her head on my lap, her eyes half closed. I ran a hand through her hair. You ever think about it? I asked. She looked up. About what? If we hadn't married that day. She smiled softly. I think about it sometimes. And? I think we'd still find each other. Why? Because you're the only one I never had to lie to, even when I was hurt. I nodded. You saved me. No, she whispered. I saw you. You saved yourself. Our daughter was Beau, run the following year. We named her Mira, after Clara's grandmother. The night she came home from the hospital, Clara was exhausted, eyes red, voice hoarse, hair tied in a rushed bun. She looked at me, Mira in her arms, and said, "Can you believe this all started because someone introduced you the wrong way?" I laughed, full and deep. Poetic, isn't it? She nodded. Janet told the world you were just a friend. And you told the world I was everything else. Clara leaned her head on my shoulder. Well, I was right. Mira is 5 now. She likes puzzles, hates peas, and thinks I work in people fixing. When she asked me what love is, I told her, love is when someone says your name like it means something. She said, like how Mom says yours? I nodded. Exactly like that. Janet never re-entered our lives. She faded, quietly, respectfully. I don't know where she is now. I don't care. Because healing doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes with a woman in your kitchen drinking cold coffee while singing off-key. Sometimes it comes with a child coloring on your tax returns. Sometimes it comes with an office that smells like pine instead of pressure. And sometimes it comes quietly. Not as revenge, but as a rival. If you had told me, the night I stood in that ballroom, watching Janet dismiss me to a crowd of strangers, that I would one day thank her, I wouldn't have believed you. But I do. Because she erased me in public. And in doing so, she gave me the freedom to redraw myself, clearly, unapologetically, and finally in ink. Clara didn't just marry me that night, she revealed me to myself, and in doing so, gave me the kind of ending that stories rarely offer. Not the happy one. The honest one.